17th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I hope everyone enjoyed the 2-month vacation. The first item that we're going to take up is the police grant for body cameras.
Hi, Chris Liddy, Deputy Police Chief. We find ourselves behind the curve on a piece of technology, that being car cameras and body cameras. I'm sure, as most of you are aware, it's been a significant item both in the media and in discussions in our industry. And at the same time, we had been watching a bit of an unusual grant that was working its way through the Connecticut legislature. And basically, the grant was structured so that in this current fiscal year, they would pay 100% reimbursement on this technology. It's a bit of an unusual grant in that it was reimbursable, but as they honed the language in the Public Act, it became attractive to not only our municipality but to others. Currently, there are 29 municipalities who have taken advantage of it, and we're asking to be included in that.
Any questions or comments from members of our body? Representative Gerber.
I was Bill Gerber, District 2. Thanks for coming tonight. I was just wondering, in terms of costs of maintenance after you have a grant to buy the equipment, are there ongoing costs that you would want to talk about?
There's at least a 3-year warranty on all the equipment. We believe that the first point of failure on this project will be the actual body cameras. And so we've estimated that over a 10-year cycle, we will most likely have to replace every single one of those. Now, bear in mind, we've been in a pilot program for the last 2 years with 12 units. But the way that we went about that is we were using cloud-based storage and paying $15,000 a year for the cloud-based storage. Now, assuming I can migrate away from that, we believe that there's an actual cost savings in the first 10-year period. We believe that the car cameras are the least point of failure. State police have been using car cameras for 10 years now, and they simply move them from car to car as cars are decommissioned. And because there's not a lot of moving parts to it, they tend to last a long time. And the last component is the servers. We're going to store the video in-house, and in this proposal, there's $77,000 worth of servers that we believe will have a 7-year lifespan. So all said and done, we believe that in a 10-year period, we'll actually save some money.
Quick follow-up. Would you think that within, let's say, 10 years or 7 years, that this will be standard practice in Connecticut so that the grant is actually saving you money, or would this be something that you wouldn't do otherwise?
A great question, and I certainly don't think that I'd be coming forward with this project if it did not involve a significant, if not 100% reimbursement. Here's my concern, though. In House Bill 15-4, the legislature mandated the state police. Every one of them has to have a body camera. And they went so far as to say, in this year, any municipality will fund you 100% or refund you 100%. And in next year, we'll refund you 50%. So without knowing for sure, the writing's on the wall that at some point in the future, this could be as standard as any other piece of equipment.
Representative Ambrose.
Yes, good evening, Captain Liddy. When will the training take place at our headquarters for the use of the camera?
Yes, the vendor we chosen is a Connecticut-based company, and they will come to us to do the training.
And obviously, there must be a manual relative to the use of the body cameras, that
Correct.
policy manual of some kind?
Correct. We have a rather extensive policy by state law. Our policy has to mirror the state police policy, and it's gone through several ideations over the last 2 years, and it's a very well-written policy. The officers seem to like the freedom that it gives them, too.
And when are officers, or will officers be instructed to activate the cameras? At what time? I mean, obviously, if they see a guy blowing a red light, obviously, if they see an infraction of some kind, or even come across someone who's swerving in their car, it would probably be some probable cause to activate it. But what would occasion someone other than those type of instances to use a body camera? If one came to a house to do some questioning, just simple questioning of someone, would it be activated at that time?
Well, the car cameras will be triggered by other technologies. An officer can activate a car camera when he feels it's appropriate. It'll also kick in when the lights go on or the siren go on, and that'll happen automatically. The policy indicates that with a body cam, you are to activate it with any interaction with another person in the course of your duty. It allows for exceptions, though. With exception, the officer can choose to turn off the body cam. He must announce the reason why while it's being recorded, but then he can turn it off. Some cases that might warrant that are interviews with juveniles, sexual assault victims, or it could be as simple as a citizen being uncomfortable and asking the officer to turn off the camera. And then the officer has the discretion to do that.
Does an officer have an obligation to inform someone who he's questioning about something that the body camera is on?
There's no requirement to say those words, but the body camera is very visible. It has an LED light on it, so there pretty much is an assumption that it's not covert in any way, shape, or form.
And at the present time, although the state doesn't mandate the use of body cameras, you feel that this may occur sometime in the future, be it by a requirement pursuant to some...
You know, the fact that they funded it so aggressively, the fact that they mandate now by statute the state police, the trends throughout the country, the lack of negative aspects to this particular technology, it leads me in that direction.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Representative Dean?
Representative Dean, District 3. Would you mind telling me the number of municipalities that have it now currently? I didn't get the number.
I can tell you that 29 municipalities have taken advantage of this particular grant. There are quite a few others that, prior to this grant, without the possibility of a refund, currently use this or some portion of this technology.
So it's 29 that have taken advantage of the grants, but there's more, you're saying,
Correct.
who may not have taken advantage.
And there's more that are poised to. The two big ones that concern me in all of this is Hartford and Bridgeport, who both indicate that they are submitting applications.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from members of the body? Seeing none, thank you, Deputy Chief.
Thank you.
Next up, we have an update from the H. Smith Richardson Building Committee. So for our members, the committee was kind enough to provide us with 15 large form handouts. So it's not enough for everyone, but it's enough for us to share. So.
Hey, how are you? How you doing?
Person that comes to mind. Who's paying?
Just did the body cam.
I'm good.
Oh, I guess, if you don't have enough.
Got extras.
Oh, you do? Okay, thank you.
Oh, this one.
Take that one.
That's fine, I can share that.
Thanks, Greg.
I was just curious if they had,
I'll take it, fine.
about they had talking about, they were concerned about the building south feeding kitchen.
How are you? Summer's over, I'm sad. Well, it's not over. We have a couple. It's over. Okay, great.
If you don't have a shower, you can
Good evening, and thank you for seeing us tonight. My name is Hal Schwartz. I'm the vice chair of the H. Smith Richardson Building Committee, and with me is Craig Curley, and he's the chair. I'm going to give you the update tonight, and then we can move on from there. When we last spoke, we were in the process of soliciting architects to look at the three plans. The first plan that we were looking at was a renovation of the building as it exists now. Plan number 2 was a complete tear down and put up a new building in the same location. And plan number 3 we were looking at was to rebuild the clubhouse at the top of Hoyden's Lane. We ultimately decided the best and the most cost-effective option would be a tear down and a complete rebuild on the site where we are now. And we can talk about why, when, where, and how we came to those conclusions after this. The building committee's been at this for about 8 months now, and we've really sat down and worked hard. Before you is an Excel document, and we call that the program. So this program is what we put together based on the needs of the clubhouse, as actually as it's going to be for the golf operation. The first column of the program is the existing square footage of the existing clubhouse. What we were not aware of when we started this process was that there was some square footage that was being taken care of by being outside of the building. There's refrigerator and freezer space outside. There's storage outside over by the cart barn, and we were aware of the mechanicals that are outside. The building as it exists now is 6,700 square feet, but with the additional square footage that had to be brought back into the building, that moves us up to about 7,550 square feet, which is what is existing with the outside images right now. Based on the program and what our charge was, the building that we're looking at now is about 9,300 square feet in order to go with the golf operations. That square footage is all laid out for you in the right-hand side where it's called Scheme 3.1R, and that's the proposed square footage, so that'll tell you exactly what we're doing with each set of space there, so we can talk about that. So what we wanted to do was just kind of let you know where we are, what we were doing, and you know, the body was kind enough to give us the $250,000, you know, back in December or January, and we've been working diligently towards that. And our committee, we hired the architecture firm of Silver Petroselli, and some of you may be familiar with that. They did the work on Stratfield School. The committee was unanimous in that decision, and we've been really, really happy with what they've done. So by the end of this month, we are going to have what we hope to be as final estimates from Silver Petroselli, a separate estimator, as well as our owner's rep, to have real factual numbers based on the schematic designs that we will have that Silver Petroselli put together for us. And we're in the process of that. We have the meeting scheduled for next Tuesday night, which we should see the figures and know where we are. Just as an update for the body, last week Chairman Curley had met, had updated the Golf Commission because we were very, very serious about the Golf Commission coming up with some kind of program to market the new facility. What can be done? How can we manage this facility? It wasn't in our charge to do that. So Craig went before the Golf Commission to let them know what we assume that the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, as well as the RTM is going to be expecting from the Golf Commission on ways to hopefully increase revenue, maybe save some money and get some money coming back in. So, and Craig can evaluate on that if you have any questions about that. So basically, where we are right now is we have option 3.R in front of us, 3.1R in front of us. We are done with schematic design, and we will have hard, fast numbers hopefully by the end of next week, and we should be moving forward from there. So we're open to answer any questions you have. In front of you, you have the footprint of the building. You also have the grounds landscaping site plan, and the last one is the program, which shows us where the square footages are going. So,
Questions from the members? Representative Gale?
Hi, Hannah Gale, District 6. So I remember when this was first brought up, there were ideas about expanding things possibly so that there were ice rinks and other facilities available for children. Is there anything in this plan that addresses that?
yeah, go ahead.
So the question was, other than golf operations, what else was considered for the facility and the program? Couple of things. I believe that Board of Selectmen provided an update to the charge that was given to the building committee to make sure that the committee prioritized golf operations but preserved optionality for in the future if Parks and Rec wanted to take advantage of the facility. One of the options that we considered was moving to the top of the hill, the other side of the campus, because that would have put us right across the street from the softball field. There's about 13 acres of space there that Parks and Rec could at some point potentially develop. Ultimately, we did not pursue that option because it was going to be $2 to $3 million more to build up at the top of the hill for lots of different reasons. One, there's no infrastructure up there to begin with, so we'd have to have the gas lines and the septic system and electrical upgraded. Also, the road would have to be widened, sidewalks would have to be put in. So ultimately, we did abandon that as an option. So that left us in our existing space. We considered shrinking the size of the footprint of the building, putting it in onto 2 stories. Of course, to be handicapped accessible, we need a elevator and all the proper accessibility. The idea being is if we shrunk the footprint, we'd preserve more outdoor space for non-golf activities. Ultimately, for a variety of different reasons, the committee decided that that was not the best option to move forward with, whether some of that consideration was cost, and just generally speaking, there were some reservations about putting a restaurant on a second floor and what that would mean for deliveries. If part of the attractiveness of having an outdoor patio is gone if you now have an outdoor deck. Then we thought about moving the lockers and the pro shop upstairs, but then there was a concern because we do have a big senior population that plays up there, having them to have to go upstairs every single time, and then maybe the elevator's not going to be that fast, and so lots of different reasons why we didn't do that. But to directly answer your question, I apologize for the preamble. So where the existing cart barn sits today, and we can, if you look at your site plan, which is the color copy, basically it's a Google Earth type view. The existing cart barn will be taken down and moved to the other corner of the parking lot. You'll find on your drawing what the architect conveniently put in. It looks like a tennis court on the bottom left corner. There's not enough room for a tennis court, but there is room for 2 paddle tennis courts or pickleball courts. So the expectation is we're not going to develop that space. We're going to reserve that space where 2 courts could be put in the future. And we'll talk a little bit in a moment about where that sits in proximity to the clubhouse and why that might be an attractive location as well. But in addition to that, the second thing that we made sure that the architects took into consideration, the landscape architects specifically, is that when we grade the parking lot, as opposed to using standard pavement or blacktop, which over the course of a 50-foot span with a 3% pitch would mean an 18-inch difference in height just to allow the proper drainage. In lieu of that, we're going to make sure that there's enough room for a 60-foot by 120-foot space, which could be used for a seasonal ice rink. That will be level, and to manage the drainage during the summer and spring and fall, that will be pervious pavement. So we're taking that into consideration, making sure that we have pervious pavement for drainage when it's not an ice rink, but it's virtually level, and set up in a way where that you actually need almost like a tractor-trailer sized compressor unit to come in and actually charge and freeze the ice. But we've set up the parking lot so that all that will be taken into consideration.
That's great news, thank
Yeah.
you.
Representative Ambrose?
Yes, hi, Craig. Has the Golf Committee discussed with the Commission, the Golf Commission, potential sources of revenue that might arise as a result of the enhancements that you propose?
Thank you, Peter. Yes, we have. The committee has talked about it at length. As Hal indicated, it doesn't fall under the building committee's charge to handle the revenue side, but we feel it's an important question to be answered. So we have talked about it. We do have a representative from the Golf Commission who is the liaison to our committee, and he's actually the chairman of the Golf Commission, so that helps. And he's attended almost all of our meetings. As Hal indicated, I also attended the last Golf Commission meeting so that I could also provide a more fulsome update to the rest of the Golf Commission. We feel that there are probably 4 legs of the stool, that I like to call it, 4 potential revenue sources that the Golf Commission should consider as a means of helping to pay for this project. I think we're probably we're encouraging the Golf Commission to do the work to actually come up with that plan themselves. We've done some work ourselves, but I'm trying to stay away from committing them to what they think they need to do. But generally speaking, we do expect that there will be energy savings just from this and efficiencies from this building, and that's probably what do we say, 15 to 20,000 a year or something like that. In addition to that, clearly this restaurant, when it's complete, will be more attractive to the concessionaire for their revenue capability. So we expect that this contract will garner additional rent above and beyond what the concessionaire is going to be paying. What that exactly is, nobody can commit to, because it does have to go through an RFP process. But we do expect that there's going to be an increase in rent that comes out of that. The third piece of it is we have right-sized this restaurant and grill room so that this golf course will now be able to have charity golf outings, which right now we do 1 to 2 a year. Trumbull does, Tashman Knolls and Trumbull does close to 20. Sterling Farms in Stamford does over 20. Oak Hills does close to 20. So there's no reason why this course shouldn't be able to attract these charity golf events, or the Fairfield Realtors Association, or some of the other Fairfield organizations that now go elsewhere. There's a revenue opportunity with that, and clearly we're open, weather permitting, 7 days a week, or the golf course is. So if there is a charity event, those public golfers are not going to have access to the course, but standard operating procedure is typically to limit outings to a specific day of the week, whether that's a Monday or a Tuesday or whatever the Golf Commission decides is the right day. But clearly, there's an opportunity where you're going to get a net gain in revenue above and beyond what the course would otherwise get. And then the fourth piece of it is just generally whether the Golf Commission considers a raise in the rates to play the course. They get between $40,000 and $45,000, or 40 to 45,000 rounds a year, and if they go up $1, that's $40,000 to $45,000 of additional revenue, assuming that they haven't started to push play away because of the cost. But I think there's the Golf Commission does need to go through a study and understand how much they can affordably raise rates in a manner to help raise revenue.
I understand that the revenue, the net revenue that was earned, I believe last year,
Yeah.
was that went into the town coffers was around 400,000.
Yeah, that's a great question too, Peter. Thank you, because that I didn't touch on that. I know that Ryan Scully, who's the chairman of the Golf Commission, talked about coming in and giving kind of a golf operations 101 to this body, and I don't think that's happened yet, but hopefully he will. I was the chairman of that commission from 09 to 14, so I have some of the statistics, and I can say one thing that everyone needs to understand is that the golf operation since this golf course opened has never been a drain on the taxpayer of this town. It's always turned a surplus. I have statistics going back to 2000, fiscal year 2000, 2001, and in the last 18 years, the golf operations has generated a surplus of over $4 million. Last year alone, it was $410,000. So depending on the point in time that you look, it's a safe bet that the golf operations is already prepared to pay for most of this project, and any incremental revenue that the Golf Commission can generate, whether it's through more rent from the concessionaire or these charitable events or just raising rates a little bit generally, it's very likely that this project will be close to being covered.
And I have one last question. At the present time, the building is maintained by the town of Fairfield, is it not?
Correct.
So any expenses, repair, roof, things like that. Going forward, the same thing will probably happen. But with a new building, I trust the expenses would be a lot less. Now, are you anticipating the use of solar panels on this building?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, one of the late changes to the design that we asked the architect to incorporate is to change a hip roof design over the locker rooms to a gable roof, which would allow us to double the amount of space available for solar panels. We also will have the entire south side of the cart barn, which will be positioned in a way so that we'll be able to fit almost 200 solar panels in total on the between the clubhouse and the cart barn.
Thank you.
Yeah, and as a comparison to that, we'll also be converting over to natural gas. Last winter, I believe the facility burned 9,000 gallons of oil.
Thank you.
Representative Wackerman?
Karen Wackerman, District 7. I just wanted to go back for a second to the ice skating rink, and I didn't fully understand the technical part, but so would it be part of the parking lot? And I know you're not promising this is just something you're making way for.
Yeah, we'll have to be specific about where. We don't want to make the entire parking lot this pervious pavement, because there is an additional cost for that. And there's a maintenance feature to it as well. Not a lot, but certainly it makes more sense to have a specific area that's cordoned off for this. And we're going to do it that takes into consideration the traffic flow and things like that, making sure that the parking lot that is not available for parking and that will be available for ice skating is in the right place. And it'll be up to the Parks and Rec Commission to actually follow through and taking advantage of that.
Okay, thanks.
Representative Georgiadis?
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Can you discuss the loss of revenue? I assume that it'll be shut down for at least one summer?
No.
No?
Yeah.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah, we're working very hard to try and keep the golf course open during the entire construction period.
The course and the concession?
Yeah, a little bit of both, yeah. So our transition plan, one of the options that we considered, as Hal mentioned, was to try and keep the building open during construction by building adjacent to but not overlapping the footprint. What we found was that that left us with kind of an oddly shaped building that just didn't fit once the old building was taken down. But the benefit to that was we keep the building open during construction. What we opted for instead, because it just made more sense in the long run, is to do this in a, once we get the funding and get through the permitting and construction designs, our first step will be to build a new cart barn. That's going to be behind the third green in a new space. On your drawing for the site plan, that's the rectangular building kind of in the bottom of the page there, just behind the third green in the parking lot. That gets built first. Once we do that, we're able to move the pro shop temporarily into the cart barn, because we're also moving the bag storage into the cart barn as well, because it's a much more cost-effective way to do it. It also allows us to be available to both men and women. So we move the pro shop in almost immediately, because it's not going to take long to build the cart barn. We take down the existing cart barn and level that space. Now and that's represented on your drawing with the tennis court there on the side of the drawing. That's where we can put food service. We can set up a tent. We can have an outdoor grill. The concessionaire who's there today can stay open as long as he wants. His liquor license will be intact because it covers the entire golf course. So the services to the golf community will be available. We're also working hard to figure out what the staging plan will be and things like that. The biggest challenge will be the driveway into the parking lot will be used by both customers and construction equipment. So that's our biggest logistical challenge. But we're going to be tucking cars everywhere we need to try and keep the golf course open. And then during construction, other than the practice greens, the course itself will be untouched. So we should be able to, once they are parked and on the course, they'll be available to play.
I also want to thank you. I noticed that the men's locker room is the exact same size as the women's locker room.
Yeah.
And if the bag storage does move in with the carts, then there will be equal access. So thank you for listening to the voices here that ask you to take that into consideration.
Yeah, we heard you loud and clear, but we heard it from a lot of people. So, yeah, thank you.
Representative Iacono.
Thank you, PMI Iacono, District 8. Thank you for the presentation. I was lucky enough to meet with these guys. They met with leadership so that we could disseminate information so that everybody would be fully informed coming into this meeting. Just some feedback that I've shared with you guys, but for the record, the estimated cost that you're working with right now is $7.1 million. And we talked about the space for the banquet facilities. My concern actually is that it's too small. And being involved in many different organizations in town, having to organize fundraisers and banquets and such, it's hard to find space in Fairfield that will seat large groups. And I'm just putting it out there that I would be one person in favor of looking at a slightly larger banquet facility to generate the revenue to attract that business. I don't know that this is going to do it. It might work for tournaments, and I might be the only elected official out there willing to put that forward as a vision for the future. But I think it's something that we should take into consideration.
Well,
I personally think that Penfield, and I know you're being very sensitive to not competing with that, I think that they are losing out on some revenue there because they can't, people want to book Penfield, but it's not big enough. And I think we were short-sighted in that vision. I don't want to see us do that again. So I am in favor of looking at something that's a little bit larger and the return on investment for that. I think that's a smart thing to do. I also think that the plan you put forward is very thoughtful. You listened to everything that we were all asking, all the different town bodies, so I do appreciate that. I was able to attend the Golf Commission meeting with you, Mr. Curley, and Mr. Moderator, if you wouldn't mind asking the chairman of the Golf Commission, he put out a profit and loss statement that was extremely helpful. If you could ask for a copy of that to be shared with the RTM, I think people would benefit from understanding the revenue and where we're making money, where we're losing money, and how we all even out. I think that's an important element of this. I agree that they need to be partners in that. I think the majority of the commission agrees with that, would be my takeaway. I'm a little bit nervous about the pervious pavement and the ice rink and what the cost benefit of that would be. I'm all in favor of it. You know, one of the draws for spending the extra money is that you're getting people up there in the winter when we wouldn't normally have them. So I think that's a good idea. But I would like to know, you know, as you move forward, what the breakout is to spend that additional money to make that happen. And then finally, I liked the idea of moving the facility up the hill and connecting it to the driving range. That's a natural way, in my opinion, of the way a golf course operation would work. That you would have easy access to the driving range as you're pulling into the clubhouse. And I saw that as a huge draw for revenue, considering some of the other golf courses and their numbers that we've talked about being quite substantial for driving ranges. It came up at the Board of Selectmen meeting about the subsurface engineering and septic and things like that that aren't necessarily being addressed in this plan. And one of the things that came out of the Golf Commission meeting for me, I'm sure, but people that are in that building constantly, is the septic system and the fact that that's a big issue. So I agree with the selectmen, and I believe they were unanimous in their interest in looking at that a little bit further. And if that number for the subsurface engineering becomes substantial, it might then make sense to go ahead and move up the hill because you're going to have to put that stuff in anyway.
Well, we actually had a phone meeting on that today. We had a discussion with our landscape architect as well. They're going to be doing a test on the septic system in the next week or 10 days or so to let us know exactly what kind of shape it's in and what's going on there. But we also have asked the estimators to put in the cost estimate, the cost to put in a completely new septic system. So that will be in the proposal coming forward. Not necessarily, from what we understand, it may not need to be done, but we heard the Board of Selectmen and other people, and we'd rather have the money there and not use it than not have the money there at all. So we have asked for that septic system, complete replacement of the septic system, to be put into the estimate with the final number, and we'll keep that money to the side. If we don't need it, then we don't need it. But it is, yeah, we heard everybody loud and clear. So just so you understand, we did a lot of research, and moving it up the hill was a great idea. The larger issue with moving it up the hill, besides everything that needed to be put up there, was Hoytons Lane. The emergency services community was not really excited about the size of the road, so the street would have to be widened for the fire department and the police department, which means getting into people's properties, getting into stone walls. So it's not only what we have to do on the property itself, just to get the building up, but what we have to do to give access to the property coming from, across Hoytons. So it gets to be a little tricky, and we were all here for the softball field, so we know what that was like. We haven't taken it completely off the table because we don't have the hard numbers yet. If the numbers go up considerably for what we're looking at, then it has been suggested that we may look to go back up there, and that's still an option. But where we sit right now, it was like almost $3.5 million more than what we're looking at right now, just to move up the hill just with what we have. So we just thought that was more than what the golf operations needed, as our charge puts it. That was there was a nice revenue generator coming from that, but I don't think, the extra money coming from the range would justify another $3.5 to $4 million.
No, I definitely appreciate your diligence. You guys are really trying to uncover every rock, and I think that's a fantastic thing, especially from a volunteer building committee. And finally, I'll just leave you with my sentiments on this. I think it's an investment for the town. I think this is something that is attractive to people when they're looking to come to Fairfield. I've had people stop me in the grocery store and say, why are we building a golf course for a small group of people that play golf? I think that it offers so much more than that as a town asset, and I appreciate that we are willing to hopefully make the investment in that. I appreciate the time you took to try and get a number that is as reasonable as possible given the programming that you need. And to the people that don't necessarily want to do this, the option is to essentially build an outhouse with a small golf pro shop, and people can go up and play golf and use a restroom and pop into the golf pro shop and go on their merry way. That's how, and there's nothing wrong with that either. It allows the town residents to have a public golf course. But I think this makes us a little bit more attractive and competitive with towns like Stamford that has Sterling Farms and Trumbull that has Tashua. So I hope that people will be supportive and open-minded as you move forward with this project, and thank you for taking all of this into consideration.
Thank you very much.
Representative Tallman?
Hi, Peter Tallman, District 8. I agree with Pam completely. I think the best thing to do would be put it all up on the hill. That would be an awesome structure. It would be, you'd have views over the Greenfield Hill and the sun. I mean, it would be really, really nice. I don't golf. I go to par 3, just so you know. And that's on a good day. Question, does anybody use the locker rooms?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because they're being cut
Yeah.
way back.
Yeah, they are, and thank you for that question, because there's a story there. As the building is currently configured, there's about 1,100 square feet for the men's locker room, about 500 square feet for the ladies. The biggest use of the men's locker room is that there are full-size lockers where between 50 and 70 lockers are being rented out for bag storage. They are people, including myself, regulars who are putting their golf bag in a locker room. They don't have to take it to and from their parking lot and their trunk. We have a lot of seniors who play up there, and being able to not have to lug a bag in and out of the trunk is a benefit. One of the biggest questions I get asked all the time is, are we still going to have bag storage? And the answer is yes, but it's really expensive to keep bag storage underneath the roof of the clubhouse. At $400 a square foot, or whatever it works out to be, there are many more efficient ways to do it. So what the committee discussed and decided upon was, if we move the bag storage out to a room that's connected with the cart barn, not access to the cart barn, but just sharing that roof, that's probably $150 a square foot. So much more efficient economically. We'll still have it right at the, right where the cart barn is. So you take your clubs out of bag storage, you put it on the cart, and you're ready to go. You return the cart, you're right there. So it makes a lot of sense. The other half of the story is that the ladies several years ago opted to have the lockers removed from their locker room, not because they didn't want lockers, but because they wanted a meeting room. And they put in a table and chairs, and the seniors and the 9-holers and the 18-holers, they use their locker room as a meeting room. Now, many men have said, well, we have our meetings in the restaurant, and when the restaurant's open to the public, it's really awkward. So part of what the committee talked about was, and oh, by the way, the lady said they would like a traditional locker room. So we said, all right, let's set up the bag storage out in a separate place. Let's do it where you're not changing your clothes or taking a shower, so it can be unisex storage. Men's and ladies are satisfied. We don't have to worry about, do we put in 50 bag storage lockers for men and 25 for ladies based on possible utilization. Let's just make it unisex and everyone has access to it. Let's return lockers to the ladies' locker room so they can use that. But let's do it right-sized, and we were able to shrink, because now we're putting in half lockers. We don't need full bag storage there, so now we have room for an umbrella, rain suit, shoes, golf balls, but it's much more space efficient. And then lastly, part of the program is to add a conference room. We're going to have a room that is, will hold about 20 people. Now, that's enough for the Golf Commission to meet up there once a month when they have their meetings. It's enough for all of the different leagues to have their meetings. It'll be open to the public if they need it. And if the restaurant wants to have a private dinner, a steak dinner for a rehearsal dinner or something like that, they've got a room right off the restaurant that they can access as well. So we thought that was a pretty good way to move forward.
Okay, great, thanks. I think you guys are doing an awesome job. You are going through this very, very thoroughly, and that's great to hear.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Peter.
Representative Siebert.
Joe Siebert, District 5. Yeah, I just appreciate all the work you guys are doing. Am I on? Okay.
Yep.
You obviously know my preference for to relocate up the hill. Your explanation about emergency services is obviously a tough hurdle. But if there's any way to overcome that, I realize, expanding the road, what that involves with the neighbors, tearing down stone walls, whatever the case might be. That's my preference, but to couple on to what Representative Iacona said, I'm just curious about trying to make, as far as comparing new with old, if you look at it says size for 120 seated at tables for the dining room, and then 60 for bar stools, 40 tables. How does that compare to the existing?
Yeah, right now the restaurant will hold 80. A little tight. Normal configuration on a given weekend is set up for 55 to 60, but for an event they can put 80. The bar area has 16 stools at the bar and probably another space for about 6 to 8 off to the side in the corner. So all in, it's about 105 people that we can hold in its entirety. The way that we've set up this, in fact, now is probably a good time to just quickly look at your just the building floor plan. You'll notice that the dining room is in the center of the building. The bar and grill room is off to the side behind the kitchen. The whole back side of the building faces the golf course. The hope is, if budget allows, we'll be able to have floor-to-ceiling glass that will open up along that entire back wall. If it is low-hanging fruit, so if there's a cost concern, they may just be French doors or something like that. But certainly, if we can make that an open-air feel, that's a preference. But you'll notice that it's not a 90-degree L shape between the dining room and grill room, and that's by design. We really wanted to be able to have, per the architect's recommendation, we wanted to have sight lines between the grill room and the dining room, primarily because we didn't want a facility that my local watering hole a few years ago used to be the Angus before they closed. The bar was always busy. The restaurant was a ghost town. So we wanted to avoid that effect here, and that does happen if the configuration's not right. By situating it so that it's not 90 degrees and you've got sight lines, the hope is that you're going to have space that spills over between the two. And we're going to make the dining room attractive so it's going to be used and not everybody cramming into the corner. The other thing is there's swing space between the dining room and grill room. So in a as currently configured, the dining room will hold 120. But this space in between dining room and grill room can seat, instead of having high tops, they can have a traditional banquet table, and we could fit 150 in that space, and that will get us the events and outings that typically top out at about 150.
So would you say that, just in my mind, trying to compare new with old, if I was to, have a wedding there,
yeah,
what would be the capacity? The realistic capacity to have a really nice wedding there,
yeah,
in old versus new?
As currently configured, probably 150. And it's a small wedding, for sure.
Yeah.
But as Hal pointed out.
By the way, my daughter's not getting married, so.
The previous design, or the penultimate design that the architects gave us before the building committee asked the architect to pare this down a little bit, was for 150 in the dining room. Before the swing space, that would go up to probably 180. The nice thing about the way that the architect laid out this design, because it's somewhat modular, to Pam's point, if the town does decide that they want us to change, if they want to change the charge and want to make this a bigger facility, the architect can just expand this center section, and we're ready to go. It's not going to be a big redraw to recreate this. The other thing to consider is the dotted line that you see around this space is the roof line. So there is going to be a pretty significant amount of covered patio space available. Again, if those walls are glass walls are opening, you're going to have a lot of indoor-outdoor space where, if weather permits, we could probably have 230 people there.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a gamble if I was trying to have a wedding for my daughter with 230 and we had to bet on the rain not showing up, but we could do more.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to note that we lost Representative Gerber and Iacono for the evening because they went to the Board of Finance Capital Planning Workshop. I don't want people to think they left the meeting early, and it's not due to a lack of interest in the golf course clubhouse. I have Representative Dean next.
Representative Dean, District 3. I was very pleased to see the bathrooms being equal in all ways. And I wanted to know, I wanted to take it a step further. Would there be any serious consideration to making them unisex bathrooms, being gender neutral? I was recently at a facility, a very large facility, and that's in fact what they had. And it was a little different at first, but completely accepted in this particular program. So I thought, what a great idea, especially
if you look at the floor plan, right next to the kitchen office, there is one unisex toilet right there.
There is.
There is one, and based on the conversations that we've had over the last week or 10 days, we are seriously considering seeing if the architect can squeeze in a second one in there, only because of its proximity to the dining room.
Well, I was thinking along the lines of just making both bathrooms unisex, making them gender neutral, and the reason being, besides it's becoming more and more popular to do that, is that if you're having events that are towards one gender or another, and there's a large number of people, then the bathrooms are accessible, both bathrooms are accessible the whole time. I am happy to see that you have one there, that's wonderful, but why not go a step further, and would it be that much more to do? Is it something that the committee would even consider doing?
Well, I think part of it is because the bathrooms, as the way they're constituted now, are attached to the locker rooms. So we have the locker rooms with the showers and the bathrooms, so they're pretty much gender-oriented. But we did want to have at least a one in there. By code, we have to have one with the shower, and we did want to have a second one. But they are attached to the locker rooms right now.
But
So-
it could be done. I mean, it's not impossible.
No, it's not impossible. It's not something we really considered, only because the women, the men and the women are going to use the locker rooms, they're going to use the bathrooms coming in and out of the locker room. So it would be hard to make them, we'd have to separate them off, and then you'd have to come out of the locker room to go into the bathroom. We couldn't make it a gender-neutral bathroom and have a door going into the men's locker room, and then the same thing on the same. I can't make the locker rooms gender-neutral. So if the bathrooms are attached,
Well, that's what I'm getting at, actually, that the bathrooms were gender neutral.
but they weren't attached to a locker room.
The whole thing was gender neutral. It didn't matter, it was unisex. So it was interesting to be in a place where men were showering, women were showering, children were showering, that's all. Not all together, boys, calm down.
Yeah, the only thing with that is all the everything has to be separated and locked. So, I mean, it's something we could definitely look at, but it's going to increase the space and increase, So that's why we went with we're looking to get the two gender-neutral bathrooms over by the restaurant, which I think is going to use a lot more space.
Representative Garskoff.
Thank you. Josh Garskoff, District 5. Following up on Representative Iacono's questions, I was wondering, with all the work you've done, I imagine you might have answers in your heads already, but maybe you don't. But could you compare the square footage of the dining room as proposed with some of the other courses you were talking about that are doing the business we hope we might be able to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Ours is definitely smaller. Tashua, which that vendor contributed $1 million to that project when he did it for a long-term lease. He seats 275 or 280, but that was specific for that. Sterling Farms will seat almost 220. And Whitney Farms, I think, does 195 or 200, depending on whether they open up the bar room or not. So, but again, because we were charged with golf operations, and I'll be honest with you, if the town bodies want to make this a 250-seat facility, we don't have a problem with that, and we've set it up because we heard this a couple of times, where we can expand the footprint without much to do, but that's not something we're going to want to do, because we're talking about $400 a square foot. So you do the math in your head. If you want to go another half-time size, we're looking at the $9.5 million nut. And again, just remember that golf outings will bring revenue to the town, but banquets and weddings, that doesn't put anything in the town pocket. The concessionaire only pays rent. So now you have to base your rent on what you think he's going to do, and it's a catch-22. So, the outings puts the golf money back in there, but if they book a wedding, that's all vendor money. The town doesn't get any of that.
I must have misunderstood. I thought this was one of the legs of the stool we were talking about.
Well, but that's because the golf revenue will be higher.
So it affects the price we could charge the concessionaire.
That's correct. Right, for golf outings, we can anticipate that it will be more, only but this. And again, we would anticipate it would be more, but it's going to be a catch-22 as to, how much more we could get for a facility that was that size.
And
Can I just expand on that? Yeah, just to make sure where everyone's clear on the legs of the stool and how that potentially larger facility would work. Hal's right. Golf outings will generate more revenue for the town in terms of the golf fees, but the concessionaire has an interest in that because they're getting the food service associated with that. If there's a wedding or some non-golf event, that's an opportunity for revenue for the concessionaire, not the town. The town might get a little more revenue if the concessionaire says, oh, I've got a 200-seat facility where I can do weddings, so therefore I'm willing to pay more per year. But that's a little bit of a bigger leap. But
Thank you,
the
that's
one,
helpful.
yeah, the one benefit to it, though, is, and I've heard this from a couple of different people, is to Pam's point, to Ed Bateson's point when we spoke to him, if the facility was larger and it just generally was available to non-golfers for the school lacrosse end-of-year banquet or whatever, that's a service to a town resident, and that is a benefit, even if it's not necessarily a revenue generator.
And so in what scenario does this get expanded? How would that happen?
Yeah, I think we'd have to get a directive from the Board of Selectmen to change the charge. We do plan to, we provided an update to them a couple weeks ago. Our expectation is to provide another update to the Board of Selectmen in October, November timeframe. And so if they say, hey, wait a minute, let's take a look at a slightly larger version, we could come back pretty quickly with that answer.
Thank you.
Let's see, Representative Horton.
Margaret Horton, District 9. First, thank you. You've done a great job. I'm not a golfer. It kind of makes me want to become one because this looks pretty cool. This is just a quick follow-up question. I understand what you're saying, that for non-golf events, we wouldn't get the revenue from that. But wouldn't, and maybe there wouldn't, I guess, be, like Penfield has a facility rental fee.
Right.
Would there be something like that?
Not in this case, because Penfield doesn't have a concessionaire that's open as a restaurant. In this case, we're asking a restaurateur to come in and operate the building is for every day that the golf course is open from sunrise to whenever they close in the evening. So it'll be their restaurant to run.
Got it. Thank you.
Anyone who has not asked a question already before we get to Representative Ambrose and Georgiadis? Representative Ambrose.
Yes, Craig, does the concessionaire have the exclusive use of in control? If I wanted to have a wedding there, would I have to use the existing concessionaire for that wedding?
I can answer that question only because I was on the Golf Commission, not in my current role, but I anecdotally know that, yes, as the contract's currently written, any business done in that restaurant will be the concessionaire's business.
So I better have an Irish wedding.
If the car,
If that's the new event concessionaire, yes.
right, but that's not to say that the Golf Commission doesn't rewrite the contract before they go out with an RFP at the new, that's part of their work, their homework that they need to do, whether that's the best contract to put out.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Georgiadis?
If, Drew Georgiadis, District 9, if the footprint is expanded and it becomes a go-to place for weddings and bar and bat mitzvahs, will that level of activity on the concessionaires negatively impact the dollars spent by golfers because they don't want to come up on a Saturday or a Friday, or so would they just say, oh, we're going to go play someplace else?
Yeah, possibly. That is certainly a concern. As the contract with the concessionaire is currently written, they actually have to have Golf Commission approval in advance to have a non-golf event during the golf season. Most of the time that's in the evening, so it's not a conflict. And in most instances, I can't think of times when the Golf Commission denied that request. But if this is a bigger facility and it's being used more in prime time or prime golf season, that may be a growing conflict. One of the things that the current layout of the existing facility, one of the shortcomings is that when the concessionaire has a 50th anniversary or 50th birthday party or something to that effect, anyone who's in the bar area, which is open to the public and the dining room is closed, the bar area has to walk through the event to get to the bathrooms.
In this?
In its current form.
Okay.
So one of the considerations that the committee took into account was, let's make sure that we can have a private event in the dining room and have a hallway from the grill room to the bathrooms that doesn't require the pedestrian traffic to walk through the event. So we did try, and we can certainly set up partitions between the bar and the dining room so that there can be two events. There can be a private event going on and have the golf course open to the public. I think the limiting factor, honestly, will be parking. Right now, we have 167 parking spaces. With the new layout, we will expand to 200 parking spaces. Part of the restriction on the concessionaire for not having that private event during the golf season is because of the parking. On a full weekend day, when the golf course is open, they use about 140 parking spaces. So there are about 25 parking spaces on average that are not being used in the peak season on the weekend. So if we are going to expand to 200 parking spaces, the intention is that we will have the ability to have an event and have that be less of a conflict for the golf operations. So I think the expectation is that there will be some of that activity, but I don't think that they'll be able to have a 200 or 150 or 170 person wedding or bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah.
2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, it'll have to be in the off season.
And when you define evening in the summer, when's the last tee time? I mean, the golfers play till 8.
Yeah, they do. But the parking
Anyway.
lot will thin out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so, and again, this looks like a very welcoming area that won't necessarily feel cavernous. So I think that's a consideration for use as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Lefkowitz?
Nancy Lefkowitz, District 1. Thank you for all the work and the effort that you've put into this plan program. Have you talked, is the concessionaire that's currently occupying the space, renting the space, are they coming back? Have you talked to them? How confident, if they leave, that you could get another one?
Do you want to take that? Or you want me
Yeah. We have been in contact with him, but again, it's the Golf Commission. Because the facility is going to be bigger, it's going to be a new kitchen. Our understanding is the Golf Commission, along with purchasing, is getting an RFP ready now to get bids in. So we know that he is very interested. We don't know what the other interest is because, to be honest with you, there hasn't been any in the last 5 years. 5 years, nobody else, he's the only bidder. So we'll know a lot more when the RFP goes out, but we know that he is interested. I mean, if you've ever been up to the golf course on a Friday or Saturday night, the restaurant's full. He's got a really good following on his restaurant, not just for golf, but the food's really good and he does a nice job. So the restaurant's pretty full during the weekends, and during the winter, it's a nice place to go. So I think, yeah, I mean, if he could seat more people, he would be very interested, but we have to go through the process, and we really won't know until that process is done, and that's out of our hands as well. So again, we're waiting on purchasing and the Golf Commission and Parks and Rec. The three of them together have to do that.
Any other questions? Representative Vergara.
Jill Vergara, District 7. I just wanted to state for the record that I agree with a lot of the other representatives who want to look into more moving the facility up the hill. I just remember from the beginning discussions that was where the revenue was to be had, was if we moved it closer to the driving range. And I also wanted to state for the record that I'm not interested in expanding the size of this. I've wanted from the beginning to keep it small, and I think that I would want to put money into maybe moving it to the driving range to capture that revenue, not making it larger.
Right. And can I follow up on that? So we hear you, and as Hal indicated, if some of the subsurface concerns about septic or frankly even excavating ledge prove to be too large, it does close the gap in cost between staying where we are and moving to the top of the hill. So we are committed to keeping an open mind about that. We are getting close to a decision point, and as Hal indicated, I think we will have estimates on that septic work by the end of the month. I think the attractiveness of going to the top of the hill, there were lots of things, in my opinion, and I think everyone felt that there were lots of benefits to moving to the top of the hill, one of which was it tied the clubhouse to the 13 acres that were available. So down the road, if the town wanted to expand and create a Parks and Rec campus, they had that. The more immediate benefit, though, is the driving range, as you mentioned, and there is an expectation that if the parking lot is shared between the driving range and the golf course, people will hit more golf balls, because currently they don't hit golf balls before they play, which is very customary, and that lack of an ability to conveniently warm up can be remedied by moving the clubhouse and generating revenue. But as Hal indicated, if we generated a couple $100,000 more than we currently do, so right now the driving range generates about $100,000 of revenue. If that goes to $300,000, which would be a pretty healthy leap, that's going to cover about maybe between $1.5 million and $2 million of additional project costs. But if the project, by moving to the top of the hill, is $3 million or more, any benefit from the range revenue is more than offset by the incremental cost, and that's really the concern that we have. To your point about keeping this small, unless the town bodies give us a direction to make this bigger, we are right-sizing this. So this building, as we mentioned, the locker rooms have shrunk on purpose. The pro shop has shrunk on purpose. The bag storage has been moved to a cheaper location, and the dining room it went from 150 to 120, so that it's any smaller, and it wouldn't allow us to attract those events. But we could go bigger if we need to. But this is as lean as I think this program gets.
Representative Walk.
Jay Walk, District 5. I'm in favor with Representative Vergara also of moving the clubhouse up the road to near the driving range. But however, I don't know whether Representative Vergara heard that when we went, before the meeting started, I had a little conversation with Chairman Curley and Hal. And one of the things they did is they contacted the police department and the fire department. And one of the things that I heard that was a concern was that Chief McCarthy said to Chairman Curley that he didn't, he was concerned about getting the trucks up the road. So that's a concern for me, especially if you need the fire department to come up. It is a great idea to put it up there. With $2 to $3 million that you're talking about to expand and fix the sidewalks and to make it, is that widening the roads for the trucks to get up, the fire trucks to get up to the road, Hal?
That's part of the cost, and as, you know, and we still need to talk about the neighborhood, because the softball field that was up there was an 18-month battle. And I'm pretty sure that the neighborhood up there and we've heard from some of the people up there that they're not, but, yeah, a lot of, we haven't even looked at the cost of widening the road. We're talking about probably just to put the building down, get the infrastructure going, putting a parking lot, because the parking lot has to be across the street, so therefore we need speed bumps and ways. Now, golf carts are going to be crossing the street back and forth, so, you know, the police department and traffic, they're really concerned about how that's going to be laid out. So there's a whole bunch of other logistical pieces that we need to put in. So, you know, we've looked at all of this. We have an idea of what we would do and how we would do it. But at this point in time where we are right now, we just couldn't justify saying, yeah, for another, you know, $200,000 a year in revenue, we'd like another $3.5 or $4 million to put up the street. I thought, you know, basically you guys are going to look at us and say, why can't you just keep it where it is? And again, if something blows up on us in the next 2 weeks, we may be, you know, extending this and saying, no, there might be another thing. But then we have to, you know, we definitely have to have a conversation with the town attorney and see what those legal costs are going to be, because you know that we're going to end up in court. We were there once before, and we'll probably be there again, so.
Thank you.
Representative Jacobs?
Matt Jacobs, District 3, excuse me. Do we have any other information on what other courses have done with driving range revenues as a comparison? Where's that $200,000 increase coming from?
Yeah, it's an estimate. The 200,000 is probably a realistic estimate that the Golf Pro has thought about and provided. In terms of benchmarks, the one that I keep going back to is Sterling Farms in Stamford. Their golf course is set up with the parking lot in the middle of the golf course, so the golf course kind of goes around it, and then also the driving range is in the middle, so it shares the same parking lot. They do $1 million a year in range revenue. So there's definitely an opportunity, but I think one of the things we heard was that projections are nice, but it's hard to bet on that. So I think 300,000 is a realistic number. That's still tripling the number that we're currently doing. Yeah, there's an opportunity there.
But Sterling Farms is the one with the two-tier range that you can access at night as well, so that would require additional build-out if we were to do something like that.
Yeah, they are open 12 months a year. They shovel off the upper deck. They will. They have heated bays with garage door enclosures, so that you're actually kind of in an enclosed space and hitting out. So they've made a significant investment. Without that investment, maybe they're making $500,000 a year. So maybe 300 is a realistic number for us, unless the Golf Commission decided that they wanted to, if the clubhouse was there, hey, let's throw $1 million into building out the driving range and see what the revenue looks like. But that's not part of this project.
And maybe is it worth exploring whether or not that as a separate project? Because I can't imagine it'd be that expensive to build that type of structure up by the current driving range as a separate place to attract revenue.
Honestly, I think the Golf Commission would be thrilled at that opportunity. I think the golfers have made it clear that if you build it, they will come. Certainly, the idea that certainly the idea that it would be available throughout the winter would be an attractive alternative. Right now, the closest winter option is either going down to Stamford or up to Shelton, because they also are open during the winter and they have the heated bays as well.
Thank you.
Representative Horton?
One more quick question about the, I am definitely interested in the idea of moving up the hill because of I know in previous presentations talking about the driving range and everything, but it does sound like there's a lot of cons, the neighborhood residents potentially. Also, one question is, I remember in a previous presentation, if we were to move the location of the clubhouse, I think that it would actually reconfigure, we'd have to move the course itself a little bit, and so, I mean, that could just be running around changing flags. I don't really know.
Yeah.
But then you know, you mentioned that with this plan, the course would stay open pretty much. Would that change things if we were to move it and have to reconfigure the course at all?
Yeah, the actual holes for the course would not be affected, but the numbering would change. So we would want to have the first hole start near the new clubhouse at the top. So what's currently the 11th hole, that would likely be the first hole. And then you basically renumber the holes. One of the benefits for moving to the top of the hill is that the existing golf operations could stay open and intact as is until we were done, so, right? Because the construction would not be competing for the existing space. So that's definitely one of the pros to considering going up.
Any other questions from anybody? Seeing, oh, Representative Wall.
I'm a bit confused. Jay Walk, District 5 again. Hi. I just got a little confused. I was just trying to siphon out my head that, so the golf, you get revenue, the town gets revenue from players to play golf.
Yep.
But if you rent out to a party, a wedding, or to a bar mitzvah, the revenue doesn't go to the town? I mean, does that make sense? I mean, I'm trying to figure some sense out of that.
It's a restaurant. It's not a rental facility. It's not like Penfield. The restaurant is open. The concessionaire has a restaurant and the bar. He runs it all the time. So, yeah. So the town couldn't rent it out and take revenue on it because he's the one that's going to be doing it. So that's part of his contract. Now, if we looked at, if we wanted to put a space in and that's another option, but I don't think, a nice monthly, a rent monthly is probably the best way to handle it.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you both for coming, and thanks for your service on the committee.
Thank you. One other thing on the list that I did want to take you through in 3 minutes or less, I promise, is our likely schedule. On the top sheet of what was provided, there's a projected project schedule. Right now, as we mentioned, we're hoping to get all of our estimates finalized in the next couple of weeks. We are looking hard at the septic and other things to make sure that if we have to consider changing our plan, we will. But if everything goes as planned and we stick with the current plan, or at least some version of it, the timeline on this is actually accelerated from what we even put in front of you here. The hope would be that we would come to all 3 town bodies in November. And we'll bring the architects, we'll bring the owner's rep, we'll give you a full-blown presentation as to what it looks like. I think the intention of today's update was to really kind of fulfill the promise that we gave to all the bodies to come back and give periodic updates so that there were no surprises when we actually came with the final product. So we would provide an update in November to all 3 bodies. We would, again, listening or trying to, we're not going to ask any of the town bodies to vote to approve the same night they received the presentation. So the expectation is we would, what's the phrase?
We would have a bonding resolution to consider in November and then consider and act upon in December. And we're working with the First Selectman's office as well as the Board of Finance to try to get all that paperwork set up and ready to go, because I know what it's like to sit down and look at a $7 million project, in 4 days and say yes or no. So we'd like to, as the term goes, give you 2 bites at the apple.
So really, the reason for that time frame, one is because we have been progressing and really trying to keep this project moving. We've been meeting 2 or more times a month, along with subcommittees beyond that. But the driving force is that we really want to start construction on the new facility, to pour the foundations and if possible, get the walls up and the roof on before winter of next year. And in order to do that, kind of counting backwards, we really, what happens is we go for funding in November, December, we go through the permitting process and all the construction designs in the first quarter of next year, go out to bid for contractors in the second quarter. If everything goes well, by Memorial Day, we're starting the cart barn. I mentioned that was our first step, so we can get that built first. And with a little bit of luck, we actually get that done by midsummer. And the golf operations pro shop moved into the cart barn by midsummer of next year. The restaurant moves right over into the demolished space where the old cart barn sits, and then through the second half of next year, it's tear down the building and get the foundations poured. If we can get all of the foundations and walls done before winter, all that interior work can occur during the winter. If we don't get that done before winter, we lose, several months, which we're really hoping to avoid. If we're able to get that done and the interior work done in the winter of next year, all the exterior work, the site work gets done in the spring. And if everything goes as on schedule, which I don't think projects ever do, but we're open for business Memorial Day. Plan B would be 4th of July 2020. So it's a year and a half away or more, but it seems like it's really fast. And that's why we're going to be back in front of you in November, December.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Any questions based on the timeline update? Seeing none, thank you both.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll conclude the presentations and break up into committees, so find your chairperson.